Timothy Wenger here from The Man Effect, uh, recording here from Portugal. Well, that's fun, first time ever. But bringing to you guys today a guy, a man, an elder from Illuman project, Mr. Joel Blunk. Did I say that right? I hope I didn't slaughter that.
Right.
All
Yes.
right. And I asked Joel to come on because I found out about Illuman project or the organization probably 6 months ago. And I've personally been on a journey of trying to connect with all of the men's organizations out there. And
Uh-huh.
so I reached out to your guys' organization and they referred me to you. And so
Yeah,
we played a lot of email tag and now we're here.
we're
So
here. It's good to be
thank you
with
for,
you.
thank you for being here. And I'm looking forward to seeing where this conversation goes.
Me
so,
too.
so Joel, why don't you kind of paint a little picture first of what this organization is, the Illuman
Okay.
project, right? Illuman,
Yes.
Illuman,
Hello. Right.
and then just what it is, and then kind of what your role is within this organization.
Okay. Illuman is a men's organization that spun out of the work of Father Richard Rohr.
Okay.
He's been involved in men's work for 30 plus years, and for a good bit of that time, the work was known as Men as Learners and Elders, or males.
Mm-hmm.
And was part of the work of the Center for Action and Contemplation in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And central to the work has been an offering of men's rites of passage, which has been an offering for the last, 20 years or 20 plus years or so. I made my rites in 2006 in
Okay.
upstate New York in the Catskills.
Okay.
And that was the beginning of my involvement in what would later be known as Illuman. This is now I think we're in our 6th year, something like that. But the organization spun out of Richard's work because he became more focused on the Living School, which is a new offering of the Center for Action and Contemplation. And he's traveled less. And a group of men who had been working with him and were supported by him rose to the occasion, and we're very pleased to have the opportunity to provide leadership for this 501c3 called Illuman. So I'm considered in the organization a wisdom elder, which is part of the leadership community of Illuman. We have a board of directors and wisdom elders that work together to provide vision and direction for the work of Illuman today. And I'm also known as a weaver in the organization, and a weaver is one of the central teachers that helps to lead and put on the men's rites of passage, and also provide leadership at different events that we hold throughout the year.
Very cool. And since the 501c3 has been formulated, how many men have gone through affiliated or other programs with Illuman?
Well, we count back to the time when Richard started the work, and there are thousands of men who have been through the rites. I don't know the exact number today, but I would guess, I think it's around 6,000 men worldwide who have made the rites. And a big focus of our work now is how to support men when they're not doing the rites. The rites of passage are very much a mountaintop experience and a way of affirming men as they move into the second half of their life and in a deeper sense of calling and purpose in the world. But we recognize that we've got to be able to support men day to day. And so that's become an important focus of our work now in Illuman.
That's really good to hear, because in my experience with other organizations for men, it's all about the weekend encounter or whatever, but there's not a sustainability to the model. It's like, well, what do I do when I go home? You know, it's like, hey, you're impacted on this weekend, I'll see you later. So
in many ways, the initiatory event or the rites of passage marks or culminates the experience that people have had throughout their life And it's
Mm-hmm.
that experience really that prepares us to move forward. And in many ways, our life is initiatory, that we're constantly in transition.
Yeah.
And the men's rites of passage helps to put some meaning behind all that life has thrown at us and all that we've experienced, and helps us to move into a place of greater understanding of who we are and what's ours to do in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
carrying that forward becomes really critical. How do you live this day to day?
Mm-hmm. That's great. And so your role, do you also help lead like these events on the weekends, or are you just kind of more on the upper level? Because if you're a teacher and an elder, that could mean you're helping steer from afar, but are you actually in actively on these
Yeah,
weekends?
the wisdom elders tend to be in the trenches with men,
Okay.
and we help lead the rites of passage, but we've also made a commitment to be with men in our own communities
Mm-hmm.
and to try to serve as we can in bringing men together so they have a community, they have a group of brothers that they can talk to and share their stories
Mm-hmm.
and find support for day-to-day living. So in a really intentional way, our work is trying to help men find meaning in their lives, wherever they are, whatever their work is or whatever their job is, their profession. And that can be challenging, but it really requires each of us trying to make some connections where we live and try to bring the practices that are central to Illuman to
Mm-hmm.
bear in our everyday lives. So I try to model that in my own life as best I can.
Yeah. And how has being a part of this organization and going through the work yourself, how has it impacted your life?
Well, I would say that my men's rites of passage in 2006 changed my life. It um, put me on a different trajectory, and in some ways, I would say that I have a sense that I was moving a certain direction in my life, and the experience of the MROP was the kind of affirmation I needed to continue with the work. I was involved with young people and very interested in developing young men's rites of passage and also
Mm-hmm.
rites for young women,
Mm-hmm.
and was developing that work when I went and did the rites myself. And coming out of that experience, I had a strong and better sense of how to do that work for younger people. And so began to work even more earnestly towards developing rites of passage for young people, and have continued that this past year. The 11th annual Crossings event happened, which is a rite of passage to mark the move to manhood for boys, young
Oh,
men, 18 to 24.
okay.
Yeah. And then there are lots of other examples of ways in which my life, I think, has been deepened and found more purpose because of my experience in the rites of passage,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to offer similar kinds of experiences, um, if not the men's rights in particular, other ways of helping men and women
Mm-hmm.
get in touch with their own identity and their own sense of purpose and essence, and how to live more intentionally in the world. I've been doing that ever since.
Uh-huh. And is this a Christian organization, or is it just is it non-affiliated
Yeah.
with anything? Because it comes across as very spiritual in your guys's
Yeah.
videos and stuff
Well,
that
we
you have
talk
out there.
about it being spiritual and not religious.
Yeah.
And we're also very upfront that this this rose out of the work of Father Richard Rohr, who's a Franciscan priest. So he's Catholic
Uh-huh.
and he's Christian. And many of us who have been involved come from similar backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Protestant myself, but I'm also an ordained pastor.
Okay.
And as we've expanded this work, we've also tried to honor different traditions, and Father Richard has done a good job of this with his work too, recognizing a perennial tradition or an understanding that truth is truth, regardless of where it's discovered and where it comes from. And so as we've developed the rituals of our rites of passage and have thought about the language we use, we believe this is meant for men everywhere, regardless of nationality or language or religion or creed
Yeah.
or race,
Okay.
that we're all meant to grow up and become adults and
Okay.
to become the fullest expressions of what we were put here on earth to be. And
Yeah.
so Lumen is very respectful of other religions, other traditions, different backgrounds, and we want to be as inclusive as possible, which is also a challenge for us, and it's a growing edge for us, and we're continuing to live into what that could mean.
Good. Because I'm aware of, there's like 2 other programs that I've seen out there, that one is open to all, one is predominantly Christian, that are in the men's sphere. So I was just curious.
Yeah. We're very aware that men from all backgrounds come, and the language that we intend to speak is a language that crosses any barriers and invites and includes. Yeah. That's our intention. We don't always get it right, but we're working at it. Yeah.
That's interesting. And so what's like the average age or type of
Well, I was
events?
44 when I did my rites, and I would say that then that was on the younger side.
Okay.
My guess would be that the average age is around 50.
Really?
Though what we're noticing now is more and more younger men are coming to our work and wanting to be a part of it, and we're encouraged by that. When Richard Rohr started, he talked about, and the men involved talked about 5 generations, looking 5 generations into the future, and hoping and working towards a time when rites of passage would become just a normal part of our culture, reintroduced here in the West. If we trace our roots back far enough, all of us have indigenous backgrounds, and rites of passage of some kind for the boys would have been commonplace.
Yeah.
But we've lost touch with that here in the West at this point. And so in thinking about that and thinking 5 generations ahead, one of the things that we've expected is that the men would become younger and younger who would enter into this. And we found that because a lot of the men who initially went through the rites themselves with Father Richard and now even with Illuman are bringing their sons, and they're coming through. And also I would say that part of the work that we're a part of in the leadership of Illuman is trying to find ways to mark other transitions. And we recognize that the men's rites of passage, as we call it, or the MROP, has an appeal and a focus towards helping men move into the second half of their lives. So it's a midlife rites of passage in many ways. And there are aspects of it that would be experienced very differently if you were 25 and you wanted to do this. But we have had men in their 20s do the men's rites of passage. But we have also been working in other areas to create rites that might be more age specific for a younger man, like 18 to 30, who would like to go through the rites, similar to what the Crossings has offered.
Okay.
That there's sort of just a different approach that with the men's rites, we help people understand the experiences that they've had and how those experiences can shape us and mold us into something that's a fuller expression of ourselves. But with the younger men, it's more the elders sharing their experiences and sort of pointing them to, this is what might happen to you, or it's going to take some form in your life. and don't
Yeah.
be afraid of it, but be open to it, to receive it, and
Yeah.
recognize that it will gift you if you're ready for it and you're willing to let it grow you
Mm.
up further. So the age is dropping for
Slowly.
two reasons. One is we're involving more younger men in our work
Uh-huh.
on the MROP level, but also we're trying to create something for younger men and include them,
Mm.
even as they sort of leave adolescence or they're late
Mhm.
adolescent themselves.
You know, and with the loss of like rites of passage in our culture too, I think a misconception that's really common is that a rites of passage type of thing is a one-time event, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm-hmm.
it's a multiple experience level thing, you know. And
Yes.
so to throw that out the window is great, and it actually makes me really happy to hear that that's your average age group, because when I think of men's work, I really think of men
Yeah.
in their late 20s or mid 30s doing this stuff, and so it actually
Yeah.
makes me happy to hear that that's going on.
Yeah. We're actually a group of us in our leadership. I'm not able to attend myself, but we're offering the first third half of life
Mm.
rite of passage for men who are moving more into an elder role, and that's happening out in Washington State next week or this
Oh,
week, actually,
really?
later this week. Yeah,
Bummer. I wish
and
I
it's
was
the
there.
first time we've ever offered it. But the
Uh-huh.
idea is to your point, Timothy, that we live our lives in constant transition,
Yeah.
and to affirm that is to help us continue to grow and to mature.
Yeah.
And life itself initiates us. And part of these rites, to do it formally, is simply to acknowledge what is happening naturally.
Mm.
And so these events become key events because they mark something that's that's very natural and that is happening to all of us at all times. Yet
Mhm.
culturally, in losing the practice of marking it formally, I think what's happened is that we've prevented people from growing. We as a culture have not continued to grow. We're sort of stuck in adolescence
Mm.
societally,
Mm.
and men in particular struggle to get out of adolescence themselves and
Yes.
prolong that into a period
Yes.
that we call adulthood, but
Yeah.
our behavior is more like teenagers.
Yeah. I mean, there's this psychological term that I like to use, but out of context, it's called prolonged adolescence. And I
Yeah,
don't use it in the meaning of like how there's some people who are disabled and continue to stay in their
right.
adolescence, but I mean it
Yeah,
as the men who refuse to face risk or face fear or face pain and stay in
yeah,
this immature state.
yeah,
Um, and so that's kind of what I hear you saying, that
yeah,
prolonged
yeah.
adolescence
Because we
thing.
haven't done a good job of marking the transition
Yeah.
into a more courageous way of living. And we also have not had mentors to show
Yeah.
us the way. We've lost true elderhood in our culture,
Yeah.
particularly among males. Yeah.
So let's deviate a little bit then. I'm really curious to hear uh, how your this doesn't represent the organization that we're talking about right now, but like, how do you feel about the current status of men in our society and like where they're at? Like, and what I mean by that
Yeah.
specifically is like the emotional state specifically.
Yeah. Well, it concerns me because I think men are generally lonely.
Mm.
I think men lack support or the um, the resource that they need or the resources that they need to um, to be in community in a way that's really helpful and healthy.
Mm.
That it's difficult for men to be vulnerable. It's difficult for men to trust each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think ultimately, really, it's difficult for men to trust themselves and um, and to know how to listen more deeply within themselves to the gifts that are theirs and what they have to bring and what their lives are meant to be about, because we're so enculturated and and I think as a result, we're stunted in our growth.
Mm.
So it has inhibited us. So I think it concerns me, because I think we're hungry as men. I think we don't know how to feed that hunger. We don't know how to satisfy that hunger in healthy ways. So we seek love in all the wrong places, to quote the song. That we have this hole in us that has to be filled, but we don't even know it's there, maybe. But we also, for sure, don't necessarily know how to fill it in a way that is healthy and helpful, and enables us to show up more fully in the world.
Mm. And do you feel like Illuman helps teach men emotional intelligence?
Well, I think it does by practice. That we talk about there being three things that are really important for us to continue to care for ourselves. And one is that we would find a group of brothers to walk with, or to be with, shoulder to shoulder. And we have offered a way of doing that through counsel. We call it the way of counsel, and practicing the way of counsel. And that involves creating safe space to be together, to be able to share our stories and to be vulnerable with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And in that experience, I think that you find men getting in touch with their emotional side, and hearing from a place deep within, which I would call the soul, to hear the honest voice, to be able to show up authentically. And out of that, I think you have emotional intelligence, or emotional maturity happening, because of the experience of being together. The other two pieces are a commitment to a contemplative practice of some kind, which often involves silence, or it involves being outdoors and in nature, or it involves, there are lots of ways to practice contemplation, but contemplation is a way of paying attention and listening and staying awake. And to do that, I think, is to learn how to embrace the fullness of who you are, your shadow side as well as the brightness that is within you, rather than to project that onto others, or to beat yourself over the head about things that you feel like you're lacking. It's more about embracing the fullness of your potential. And then the third piece is a connection with the more than human world, and with nature, and recognizing that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves, that we as men are not the center of the universe, any one of us or all of us collectively, but we're inextricably linked to the universe. I read somewhere last week that it is in us and we are in it at the same time. And one of the ways to maintain that kind of a reverent perspective is to walk out into nature and to engage in a relationship with the trees, or the river nearby, or the clouds above your head, or the air you're breathing, and to recognize yourself as part of this massive organism that is life itself.
So it's that's what I like about what's that name of that type of therapy where you actually do it? There's an actual term for it. I'm trying to think, but it's in the actual action that it's therapeutic.
In practice, or experiential learning, that sort of.
It's a long. I'm bummed I can't think of the term right now.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, because I ask everyone this question, and it's what my project foundation is built upon. But if you were to describe what it means to be a man in one word, what would it be and why? I know it's a little bit of a transition, but I wanted to fit it in there. So.
Well, I would say challenging,
Mm.
and that word comes to mind for the very reasons that we've just been discussing.
Mm.
That I think it's
Being present.
hard
Yeah.
to know how to be a man and how to be a man
Yeah.
today because there are such different and varying expectations of men
Yes. Yeah.
in the world. And I think culturally speaking, that we are an adolescent culture and society, the United States in particular. You're outside of that yourself right now, so
Yeah.
you're liberated from that, Timothy. But those of us stuck here in the continental U.S. are living in a culture that says we don't expect our men to grow up.
Mm.
We expect them to chase women, to play video games, to make money, to be competitive, um, to act kind of goofy at, I mean, if
Yeah.
you look at sitcoms and the representation of men almost across the board, they're just sort of bumbling, um, extended adolescence, and they're sort of cute and admirable. At least that's how we portray that.
Yeah.
And yet we know that it gets us in trouble. And the Me Too movement, and you can just look across the board at behavior of men, and it is poor. There are poor examples everywhere of men who are taking advantage of women, of
Mm.
men who are greedy, of men who are looking out for themselves before anybody else because they
Mm.
think that's okay. That's sort of culturally expected, that if you don't look out for yourself, who is going to?
Yeah.
And of men who have collected lots of things and can never have enough.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a challenge, because if you're going to be what I would describe as a mature, healthy man, you've got to be countercultural, and you've
Mm.
got to go against the grain,
Mm.
and it requires courage to do that. And so courageousness is the other word that comes to mind, because I really think it takes having heart for us to be men today. It means laying aside things that earlier in our lives seemed really important. And
Yeah.
those are things that I think are tied to our ego and our ego development. And we have to develop a healthy ego in order to die to it, to live to something bigger than ourselves.
I like that.
But culturally, we don't give men permission to die to their egos,
Mm.
because we honor them for whoever has the biggest ego gets the most attention, right?
Pretty much. Yep.
As long as you have a lot of money, then you are worth something.
Yep.
And I think that is very counter to
Mm.
to what it, I think, really means to be a man, which is to think of others first, to be loving and kind, to be generous, to be forgiving, to be humble,
Mm.
to be willing to be vulnerable, which is in part to let other people know that you don't have all the answers, you don't have it all figured out.
Mm.
You're trying to find your way just like the next person, but you're willing to admit it.
Mm.
So the challenge is, how do you find the support you need to do that? Because I think in isolation, it's nearly impossible.
Mm.
And an organization like Illuman is offering community to men, and is offering a vision and a hope and something to aspire to for men. At the
Yeah.
same time that I think underneath it's providing some stability and support and direction, and even a nudge, like a gentle push that it's
Yeah.
time for you. It's time for you to grow up.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, because for me, my experience in other men communities or whatever you want to label them,
Mhm.
the biggest takeaway I've ever gotten is the friends that came with it, because I have this
Yeah.
similar language and
Yeah.
encounter to push me in the
Yeah.
right direction.
Yeah.
Um, that's really good. So let's say there's someone who's between 30 and 50 watching this, who's on the
Yeah.
fence about trying to find a place to plug in. How would they do so? How would they get plugged into your guys' organization?
Well, the quickest thing to do would be to go online
Yep.
and to illuman.org.
Yep.
And
I'll put a link to that in the
okay, and
description.
just and read about it. There are events that happen. We have an
Mhm.
annual conference that takes place every fall.
Okay.
This year it's in October. It's in Albuquerque next
Okay.
month. And that's an invitation to men who have never experienced our work, to men who have been through the rites, to men who are very engaged in their communities, to men who feel isolated, to come together. And we'll have 300 men in Albuquerque next week to be introduced to this work and
Mm.
also to take it to a deeper place. Bill Plotkin, who is a depth psychologist, is going to be our guest. And
Very cool.
Animas Valley Institute has been a kindred spirit of ours, where we've been partners in this work less formally for some time and now
Mhm.
more formally. There are lists on the web page of upcoming men's rites of passages that you could apply to,
Mhm.
and there are several offered every year.
Mhm.
And you may have to travel to get there, but we found that the traveling sometimes helps men make the commitment and also gets them out of their familiar
Mhm.
territory. You know,
Yes.
if you live in the West, come to the East and
Mhm.
go into
Vice
the
versa.
Catskills, into the trees and the pines,
Yep.
and likewise from here, go to the desert and
Yep.
and have a new experience. Both let the land teach you as well as the rituals and the elders who are there.
Yeah.
So that would be my encouragement. That the thing you might be able to take away right away is the practice of counsel,
Mhm.
which we describe online. There's a video there to explain it. There's also some resources, written resources. The Center for Counsel out in California taught us how to do it,
Mm.
and you could go there to learn counsel. And the gift of counsel is that you can do it with one other person, with a small group right in your own community, and
Mhm.
you can very quickly go to a very deep place of storytelling and sharing and intimacy that brings something alive in us, and
Yeah.
it's very accessible. Yeah.
Hmm. That's very good. I'm sure I could ask you about a million questions about your organization and what you guys do. But for everyone who's watching, outside of going to their website and all of that, would you have any last words that you'd like to say to them before we wrap it up here?
I would encourage you, if you're a man watching this and something has sparked in you, that you simply take the next step.
Hmm.
And that might be to go to the website, or that might be to get in touch with you, Timothy,
Yep.
or even reach out to me if you'd like, and have a conversation, and consider a contemplative practice that you might include in your life, whether that's beating on a drum, or going for a walk in the woods, or
Hmm.
practicing centering prayer, or
Hmm.
sitting in silence in your room for 5 minutes in the morning. Just start somewhere
Hmm.
that is an initiative experience, a beginning place for you to become more contemplative, to be
Hmm.
more willing to pay attention and to open up. It, you don't have to think your way there. You don't have to work hard to do this. I think there's the authenticity that's in each of us is already present.
Uh-huh.
That we have to let our egos down
Mm-hmm.
and allow them to get out of the way. And that's so counter to our thinking. Literally, it's counter to our thinking. So
Absolutely.
don't just do something, stand there, would
Yeah.
be my advice. Take that as a first step.
Well, I love it. Joel, thank you so much for giving me your time. And
You're
I will
welcome.
put links to the website and any other information that I feel is necessary. Also, if anyone who's watching, if you do want to reach out to me and ask me questions, please feel free. Um, this is not a program I've personally been through yet. It's on my list of programs to go through, though.
Well, I hope I'm there
I'm,
when it
I'm,
happens to me.
I'm usually I like to make myself my own guinea pig. So
It's good to talk to you. Thanks for reaching out.
yeah,
And
absolutely. And
we appreciate your support of Illuman. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you guys for watching. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.